Hello there, this is Russ Bucher from ControlMyNikon, and in this video we're going to take a look at how we can capture a focus stack of this rock. This is actually iron pyrite. And normally when you capture an image of a specimen like this, the depth of field is too shallow. So we're going to capture a series of images and stack them together using Zarine Stacker, and we'll come up with a final image that looks like this. Now, I've had a lot of requests on how I, as the developer, ControlMyNikon, actually use it from day to day. And this is an example of how I use it. This really isn't like a tutorial. We get into actual focus stacking theory and how to set every little thing in our focus stacking tutorial video. So this is just a quick video showing it as I use it. So I'll be explaining some things along the way as I go. Okay, let's take a quick look at my setup here. This is the main monitor I run ControlMyNikon in. I like to have 2 or 3 monitors though, so I could put the live view on one monitor and say the image browser on another. And this is a axial lighting setup I have where the light actually bounces off a piece of glass or a beam splitter and follows down the line of sight from the lens, which gives a very direct lighting, great for shiny things like coins. We're going to see what it's like with this piece of iron pyrite. This is a D800 sitting on an old photo enlarger copy stand. It's very heavy, very stable, and it works really nice. And because I do so much tethering, I've got it running on AC power, which is worth every penny. 105mm macro lens from Nikon. And you see the 45-degree angle sheet of glass there. And then we have a, this is a downlight, it's called, normally hangs from ceilings, and that is going to be used as a backlight. And I have another one shining off the sheet of glass for a foreground light. And we'll put the rock on there. This is what it looks like when it's all lit up. And I have 2 separate power supplies to control the intensity of the lights. Works really good this way. It's very accurate. Not a typical lighting setup. Now you can see that the top light is actually casting a shadow, or is casting light directly onto the side of the mineral. So, and that's no good because I really want my light to be coming straight down. So I'm going to put a gobo in there, just a 3D printed piece of stuff to ensure that the light has to bounce off that piece of glass and then straight down. Now I've got the room dark because any light from the opposite side of the glass is going to bounce straight up and into the lens. And so the darker the better. Now let's move the light back here a little bit. You can adjust the intensity this way, or you can just adjust the voltage on the power supplies. These lights each are worth about $20 US. They give a nice warm light. I think it's a 3500 Kelvin lighting. And because they have the same color temperature, we can white balance using just the backlights. So adjust the voltage for the foreground light and the voltage for the background. So a handy little setup I've been experimenting with. So let's see what it does with our mineral. Okay, so I'm just going to make sure I have all the settings here. Okay, on ControlMyNikon, I have the D800 already connected. And I go to a low shutter speed, f8 for maximum sharpness for this particular lens. That's a 105mm Nikon macro lens. I'll start off at a low ISO because I want minimal noise. Manual mode, always manual mode when you are tethering. I just don't like to have the body making any decisions concerning exposure because I'm capturing 30 images. I don't want one of those images to be exposed differently by some decision that the body makes. And I'll leave the exposure delay off. And for the white balance here, I'm just going to bring it here to auto, and so I could show you the difference in how the white balance is calibrated using the software. So that's a critical step because I'm going to capture JPEGs, so I want the white balance to be correct. Put it in this folder using the main counter, and we'll put them on the computer, and I've saved all those settings to the profile of Pyrite 1. Okay, so I'm going to turn on live view, and I'm going to increase the lighting a little bit here. Now the light I have for the background and the foreground light are the same color temperature, so I can just do a white balance right on to the lit background. Okay, so the brightness is up, and all I need to do is go over here to calibrate white balance. And because it is set to auto, to me that doesn't look very white, but watch what happens to this color when I do the calibration. You'll see it change a lot. Now that's a proper white color. And it is now balanced, and that information is stored in the body preset 1. So go back to auto, preset 1, keep it right here in preset 1. Now let's go into live view again. And the first thing I need to do here is do a rotation. And now for all the white balance settings, you go to the view menu, layers, and I'm going to change the rotation because when a camera is mounted vertically like that from the Nikon, the camera sensors, the orientation sensor can't figure out what direction is pointed. So I'm going to override it to level, and I'm going to turn on copy stand mode. So whenever I move something to the right, it actually moves right on the screen as well. I'm going to put the subject on the background here. Move it down a little bit. Now when I move it right physically, it actually moves to the right on the screen. Okay, that is close enough. And I'll leave the focus box on. I'm just going to try a focus here. You can see it looks pretty noisy here. These are actual JPEG compression artifacts. The live view imagery isn't very clean because it's really just a 640 by 426 low quality JPEG stream coming from the camera. So whenever you blow it up to a larger size like you have here on my monitor, you can really see those. But you can reduce it a little bit by using noise reduction. I'm just going to increase the lighting here so you can see that. So that's not noise because the ISO is 200, but those are JPEG compression artifacts. So I'm just going to turn on noise reduction, and now it's just a little bit less annoying. It's easier to kind of look at and work with here. Now that noise reduction didn't do any noise reduction in your final captured images, just this stream of data from the camera here. Off and on. Okay. So let's look at some other things that we can use. Well, first thing I need to do is determine whether that exposure is accurate. So I'll turn on the outer exposure markers. And really, this is just doing a histogram. You could turn on the histogram here, but because this is a high key image, a lot of it's going to show up as being blown out. So this really isn't that useful. But this is. So I'm going to use the outer exposure markers, and I want to mark as red or whatever color I have set here, maybe purple, those areas that are lower than an exposure of 5 or higher than 250. So anything that's at risk of being too dark or too bright. And I could see over on the right side, this is really blown out here. And so I'm going to put in a gobo here to block that. Okay, so that looks a little bit better. Now you can adjust this. If I was to go bring this down to a 0, you could see there is no risk of any of the subject area here being too dark. And if I bring it to 255, there's nothing being blown out as well. So I'm just going to increase my lighting to get the brightest possible image without blowing anything out. So I'm going to increase it here. Now I don't really want to go any brighter than that with our lighting system because the lights are just going to get too warm. But if I needed to make it brighter, well, you could change the aperture or the ISO here. And although in some bodies you need to leave live view, come back here, make changes, then go back into live view to see the effects of the changes. But so far so good here. I don't seem to be blowing anything out. So I'm going to bring my warning markers back up. You see if I really increase the markers, it shows that it would be too dark in these areas, but that's too high. So I'll bring it to 5. Same with the high markers. I can bring it back a bit, and that was actually pretty close. Leave it at 250, but at 255, it's not blown out. That is really close. So I'm going to reduce the lights. You see if you reduce it too far here, the markers decrease off the brights, but they start increasing on the lows. And to me, that is a pretty good balance, especially when we're doing a very shiny object here, like this iron pyrite. Okay, I have the focus grid here, and it looks like it's nicely centered, but with this grid here, you can change the color a bit. A little bit easier to see. Yeah, that's not bad. I'm going to just try autofocusing on this. Okay, it looks good. Okay, so the next thing to do is just capture an image, and let's see what it looks like. So I'll go to the browser, and here we have it. Now, you'll notice that the orientation change that we applied in live view was not brought over to the final captured image. And that is as designed. You'll need to rotate these if you want in post-processing. I'll just double click on the image to bring up the magnifier. I'll use my mouse wheel to go in and out here. And oh yeah, it's some areas here fairly well in focus, but you can see that not all areas are, and this is the problem. We just don't have enough depth of field at f8 to be able to see the full depth of field of this particular object. That's why we do focus stacking. Okay, so I mean, this looks pretty good. So I think we should now try to do a stack. So I'm going to go up to workflows and focus stacking. And the captured images, while we're stacking, are going to show up here later on. I'll just flip back to live view here. And so you need to do your estimate of how many images at a particular step you need. And really, this is just a matter of getting to know the equipment. And I know on this one, this is roughly going to be 20 slices of maybe 50. And I'll leave the delay at 500 here for doing the preview. Now if I go to the preferences screen, which will just close live view, go into it, you can see here under stacking, I've got this turned off. So if I do a preview now back in live view, watch how this changes. is going to start moving the focus motor, and I could see that I didn't start with the focus close enough to me. So now I need to find the area that's closest. So I'm going to use this button here to bring the focus closer. You want to go to a point where everything just goes a bit out of focus. It looks like this area here is the closest part of this object to the camera. So back it up a little bit. Okay, so now I'll try preview. And you can just watch it as it goes to see if it actually makes it to the farthest parts of the depth of field of this image. And I think that was close. Maybe I'll use a bit more for slices, and you can see it brought you back to the beginning. So now, because I think it's close, I'm going to go back to preferences, under stacking, and turn this on. So now, when I go back into live view, it's actually going to capture these small 640 by 426 images, and it's going to send them out to the stacking program, which is Serene Stacker, and it's going to stack them for me, and it's very fast. So I get a quick look to see whether I'm close. Okay, so here's all the different images. I'm just going to go up here and go align and stack Pmax. And because the images are very small, it stacks quickly. And here is the resulting image. So bam, it's done. That took 10 seconds. If those were regular size images, it's going to take a long time. It'll take quite a few minutes. And Serene Stacker is one of the fastest stacking programs out there too. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit here. There's not a lot to see because it's so low resolution to begin with. But I want to see, is there any areas that are out of focus? And because we started, I think it was with this, you see how it's been flipped? Because in live view, we're looking at it in copy stand mode, which flipped it horizontally and vertically. It was in lower right in live view window. The final image, it's actually the upper left. Well, to me, that doesn't look too bad. This is very sharp edges. This isn't too bad. Tough to tell because it's shiny with a white background. I'd say this is worthy of trying to do the full stack on. So I'm just going to shut down the focus stacking program. And you can see how it's returned back to the beginning. I'm just going to double check that. Okay, so now we'll do the actual capture, and we'll come back when it's done with the capture. And now we're using the full-size images, which are huge. So this is going to take a while. And we'll come back when it's done. Well, we're almost to the end of the stacking, and you can see that the edges are becoming very well defined. So it's looking good. And when it's done, it'll make an output file. So I'm going to save that. Save output image. I'll save it to the folder. And you can see where there's 2 underscores here. These are the images that were saved during the preview with the very small ones. And here, actually, with a single underscore is a folder that we just saved to. Just going to bring that up. And here it is. And I always just do a little tweak in post-processing. Let's see what it looks like in GIMP, which is the freeware version of Photoshop. Oh, looks okay, I guess. And the things I'm looking for here is, did I get enough coverage with the step? Because if I make the step too large, when the focus moves down this plane, you'll find areas that are sharp and then not sharp, sharp, not sharp, and that would be an indication that the step is too big. But here it looks like I've got pretty good coverage. So I'm just going to go up here, colors, curves, and I always give it a little bit of extra contrast. It's just my usual workflow. Now I'll go back to colors, into levels, and I'm going to find the black point, which is, this is one of the darkest areas here. A white point, these parts in here were quite white. Maybe a little bit too light. Try auto and see what it gives us. Oh, not bad. Black. And we'll give it a sharpen. Now to compare that with one of the original images that was not stacked, but that we had captured just a single shot to see what it looked like. Here's what that looks like. See if I can bring them both up here. Okay, so here was our initial capture. You could see that at f8, it really doesn't have enough depth of field. So we captured 25 images, stacked them, and this is the final image. So there you go. That's a typical focus stacking session in ControlMyNikon. Now we covered a lot of ground here, but there are video tutorials available on our website showing how to use live view, the file naming system, focus stacking, the image browser, and all that. So to dig into each one of those a little bit more, you can just check out those videos. Other than that, have a great day.